I am sitting here, lots of time on my hands, as I'm sure many of us around the world have. I thought this would be a good opportunity to try to look at some of my old code that I wrote when I was first starting and take my experience from the past 2 years and make it better. Hopefully, help myself learn a little bit and help others learn a bit in the process too. So let's jump right in here. What we're going to be doing, we are going to be improving a Minesweeper game that I made. You can access it too throughout the project. It will be at minesweeper.zachlawton.dev as shown up there. And this is something that I built. It was kind of a custom project. I was in a mini bootcamp type thing where we were supposed to make a grid that you turn different colors, and I kind of went a little custom with it, and I turned it into a Minesweeper game. And I can show you kind of what I built here. So let's make this a smaller field. It lets you choose a field size, and you generate a game, and then it basically starts a game of Minesweeper. Now, if you're not familiar, Minesweeper is a game where there are a certain number of mines in here. Here there's three. It's not very clear from the wording, something I guess I'd also want to change. But basically, there's going to be three mines somewhere underneath here, and we need to figure out where they are by clicking in spots. Oh, that was one of them. I clicked it, I lost. Let's start a new game, see if we can get a better example here. There we go. So one, the numbers mean that it shows how many mines are in the surrounding squares. So one of these squares around the outside has a mine. I'm going to take a risky click and click there. Oh, one there. Okay. So we know we can keep clicking until we start to find something that indicates where a mine is. And I'm just doing very poorly here. That's the trick usually starting out. You gotta get enough. There we go. Okay, so here's an example where there's a 1 here, and we know there can only be one place where there's a mine. So we're going to right click here, and we mark that as a mine. This is also a 1, but we know that mine is flagged, so we can click that out. There's a 2 there, so that has to be 1. That's a 2, so that has to be 1. And that's the basic gist. It's using numbers to find the mines and flagging them. As soon as you flag all the mines, you win. In case you're not familiar with the Minesweeper game. So this is something that I built as a part of my initial coursework 2 years ago. I was very proud of it, still am. It was kind of fun to build. It was cool as one of my first projects, but you might be able to see kind of from here that it's not the prettiest thing. It's mostly black and white, not a lot of styles. I'm pretty sure this is just the default font for the browser. And let's take a look at the code here as well. So the code here is basically just, if you look on the left, there's just an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and a CSS file, which is also why I'm kind of excited to hop into this because I have done a lot of work over the past couple of years in React, doing a lot of framework things and just doing things where all my website is kind of powered and rendered by a framework. And I think getting back to kind of the DOM rendering or DOM traversing roots of JavaScript here will be good. And we can go through some of these files here. This CNAME here, you don't need to worry about too much. It's basically something that GitHub requires in order to serve up the site to this URL. But it's kind of irrelevant to the code itself. This won't be here if it was served on a different web server, for instance. Let's look at the index.html, also pretty basic. You can see here in the head we've got the character set, viewport things, title, Zach's Minesweeper for the tab. It links to a style sheet. We're also linking to jQuery here. We're using jQuery to load the page, which isn't used as much anymore, so that's something I'll probably want to change. And then let's just collapse the head here because that's a bunch of metadata we don't need to worry about right now. This is the main body of it right here. This is where all the action's happening. And let's see if I can get them side by side here. Okay, perfect. And you should go away, file viewer. I don't want you here. All right, so you can see here that there is Zach's Minesweeper, which is here, heading 1, and then we just have a choose field size, which is a subheader. And then we have the form here, and the form is going to be this form here, basically a set of fields that you fill in, and you have a submit button, which in this case is new game. And then below that, there is a mine field, And there is a little bit of instructions here that I wrote. And I'm flying through this because I just want to give a quick overview. I'm going to be diving deep into this in later videos. But just to give you a heads up of kind of what's going on, so I don't have to spend time in later videos going over the overview here. So yeah, we got a little instructions here, which match up with the instructions here. This is how you do it, or how you play the game, letting the users know. And down here is kind of where the magic happens and where all the clickies went. So I put a table here, and when you first load the page, it is an empty table. But it loads up this script, and this script is what fills in that table and does all the kind of logic and clicking that we were looking at before. So we'll take a look at that here in a moment. So that's the HTML. Let's hop over to the CSS now. CSS is pretty basic. I mean, you're looking it over. There's some borders, some basically paddings, widths, minor size changes, color changes, but there's some improvements that could be made here with maybe organizing it a bit better, maybe making some standard CSS variables or items that we could reuse. So we might take a look at that later too. Now, this is where I imagine a lot of our refactoring is going to happen. This is a script.js. This is where all that JavaScript is being pulled into the web page. And if we look through here, we've got several functions. I like what I did with organization. Good job 2 years ago, Zach. But there's definitely lots of room for improvement. Let's get to the top of the file here. Cool. So it looks like we have maybe some global constants here. So this is we're picking out. We're saying Pixelcam is, again, it's using jQuery. So anytime you see this $sign, it means jQuery is being used. We're gonna want to get rid of that eventually here. But we're basically saying, okay, this is what the pixel canvas is. We're telling JavaScript that's the pixel canvas. This is the height and the width it needs to be. It's how it's set in the form. And the rest of it is, I mean, it looks like kind of manual things. We have a winning message where the HTML is just kind of set as a plain text string. We don't want to do that. And there's all these little kind of JS doc comments here, which I'm not a fan of. Like while I was learning, I made a lot of them, but they seem kind of redundant. They're supposed to explain the functions, but I don't think we're going to need that. But we'll get more into that later here. So, I mean, it's kind of clear here that we're making a grid. So this function makes a grid, and it is, I left comments. Good job, Zach. There's a lot of places here where we have this going on, where there's like a string plus a variable plus a string. I think I'm going to want to replace that with template literals. There's something in the pick mines. I'm guessing that has to do with picking mines. That's probably randomly placing mines on the field, which we can clean that up too. Clearly, I'm not getting exactly what this does from the name. I'd like to rename that to just make it clearer. Is mine, that's going to be a Boolean or just a true false to say, hey, is this square a mine? Remove what? Remove an element from an array based on its value. Apparently, some point I needed to remove an element from an array. I'm not entirely clear on why it's doing that, but we'll figure that out. Get neighbors. I'm sure this has to do with getting that number and figuring out how many surrounding mines there are. Again, we've got a lot of strings and plus variables plus strings. That's probably going to be the first video is replacing all these with a template literal. But that's not what this video is about. This is an overview, so I'm not going to bore you. There's a lot of this too. There's a lot of kind of redundant. The thing that's tricky is, so if we look at the field here, if we're looking at this square and we want to know about the neighbors, we want to know about the bottom, the left, and the bottom left, but we don't care about the neighbors up here. But if we go on to say this corner, we want to know about the upper right, above, and the right neighbors, and there's no neighbors down here. And that's kind of where a lot of this logic is coming from, where it's saying like, oh, well, if we're in this spot, we need to do this. If we're in this spot, we need to. It looks like a lot of redundant code. It looks messy. We'll dig into that later. We'll try to find a better way. Count surrounding mines, and that looks like that's probably just a calculation to check each neighbor and show the number. Again, $sign, not happy with that. We're gonna rip out all the jQuery. That'll probably be a longer video or a multi-part video. Uh, Game over. So it looks like that's where you lose. I believe it checks each time to see if you've lost, and if you did lose, it's game over. There's a shuffle. I'm sure this is probably to shuffle up the squares and randomly place the bombs, which I would expect to be shuffles an array. Yeah, so it's probably has to do with where the bombs go. I would expect that to be a little closer to where we saw the grid being created, and a lot of this could probably be consolidated into a class or something similar. Um, and check win. Okay, yep, this is what I was talking about. Every turn it checks to see if it's a win. If there is a win, then it does the I don't even know. It's not entirely clear. There's some logic here somewhere to say to give a winning message and to give a losing message, but it's not clear just at a quick glance exactly what it is. Okay, so this just shows if it shows the winning message just if there's a win. We can make that clear though. Uncover, that is probably clicking something and uncovering it, though I feel like I already thought that was a previous function. So maybe that meant something different. Again, we can we can clean that up a bit later. So those are all kind of the functions that run the game. Actually, let's clean this up. We're gonna collapse all these. We got make grid, pick mines, is mine, remove, get neighbors, count surrounding mines, game over, shuffle, check win, uncover. All right, so that's all of them. That's all the named functions we're using here. And now you see here we got the document ready, and this is where it's saying, hey, it's go time. The document loaded. Now we're going to take everything we wrote and we're going to run it. And what it is doing here is it looks like it's saying when it submits, we are going to generate the play grid, and it's basically a bunch of event listeners. We're gonna click. We're gonna turn things over. Listen for a click. Listen for this. If this happens, then do this. And I mean, I don't know. I can see what it's doing. A lot of it's just kind of unclear, especially with all these jQuery items here. It's hard to clear exactly or see exactly what it's doing. I would like to have more declarative code that just kind of says what's going on rather than having to mentally parse what's going on. So already just kind of an initial glance here, there are a bunch of things that I can see I'd like to improve, from the look of the site to the JavaScript, removing the jQuery, getting better structure to figure out what's going on. And luckily, we are all on lockdown for quite a bit of time, so I've got nothing but time. I plan on doing just one small update a day and documenting when I do. Hopefully all the updates are a bit faster than this video was, because this ended up being a bit longer than I wanted. But yeah, hopefully this is educational for me and everybody who views it. And stay tuned for the first update and fix tomorrow, where I fix newbie Zach's code from 2 years ago. Yeah, so stay safe, wash your hands, and stay healthy. Thank you.